If some of you can make yourself available, that will be nice in video. That otherwise, as I said, it's feel a little weird to just talking to the screen. All right. I guess next week is the final exam week. So would you like to have the class, or would you like to not have the class? I guess you would not like to have the class. I'm just assuming. So I'll not take the class. I'll not hold the class for next week. So anyway, so let me so last time we were discussing this football data, and if some of you can make yourself available, that would be nice. Thank you. In the video, unless you have a really problem. So thanks, Vaishita. Thank you all. Yeah, thanks very much. Otherwise, I keep feeling like, I'm talking to a tin can, the Coca-Cola tin can. I'm just something I feel very weird. Okay, so this is where we stopped last time, and we found that, somewhere here the lambda was likelihood was maximum, and that was around 1.515, and it indicated that likelihood estimates is as good as a moment estimates. For Poisson distribution, it works pretty good. Okay, next. There was one suggestion, if we can use binomial in half. So typically we should choose a very large n. Question is, can I say FTH? Can I assume that if this home team goal scored by the home team that follow binomial distribution with say some big number, I don't know, I'm just taking ad hoc, some 50 comma 0.5, is it a good distribution for the thing? So what we can do, if you go up, you remember that we were calculating these probabilities of probability hat, and then we calculated the expected probability. So same thing, we will do it here, but instead of using the probability mass function of the Poisson distribution, we will use the binomial. D binom is a built-in function for which we suppose know that size is 50 and probability is 0.5. Okay, then these are the probability hat, and so to be there all 0, so that means it's not working at all very well. So I may have to go up to 50, and then let's see what happens. And this is the probability distribution, and if I compute them as expected frequency out of 50, and I compare them, so if you assume that the probability, the goal scored by home team will be binomial 50 comma half, p equal to half, then expected number of match where home team will score say 25 goal is 42. There will be 42 such matches where home team will score 25 goals. So clearly this is not a very good model. Okay, so binomial n half is not a very good model for us. Okay, so binomial 50 comma half is now is not a good model for this problem. Okay, as I said that there are all models are wrong and some are useful. This binomial 50 comma half is not an useful model for EPL dataset or for modeling. I don't know, for modeling this variable, that number of goals scored by home team during a EPL match. Okay, so this we decide that okay, this is not a very good model. But can I assume a model? Can I at all use a binomial model, but not with 50 half, but some other parameters? Can we come up with such models? We can try out, we can at least figure it out. Can we try some other models? So what we can do for binomials is some other uh, other binomial models. So basically I'm saying that FTAG, this number of goals scored by the home team, sorry, FTH, FTHG and FTHG following binomial n, say m comma p. I'm using m purposefully because typically n is used for the sample size, so I don't want to confuse that. So we do know that expected value of, so let me just call it x. I don't want to write again and again the same FTHG. We do know x is m times p, and variance of x is mp times 1 minus p. Okay, now let us look into the data set. So my mean is mean, let me calculate the variance of FTHG. Okay, so mean is 1.515 and variance is 1.559. Okay, so what I will do, I will say that what I can do is 1.515, say 8, rounding off to the thing, is equal to m times p. Okay. I'm just approximating it equal to 1 mp, and then 1.5591 is my variance. 1.5591 is my variance, mp times 1 minus p. Now probably you have making a guess that okay, I'm going to create some sort of two equations and trying to solve for m and p. But here what I can do, see mp is here there, so I can replace this guy with 1.5158. So 1.5591 equals to 1.5158 times 1 minus p. So which is effectively 1 minus p equals to 1.55 divided by 1.5158. 5158. So this is 1.08566. So this is my 1.08556. So my P is then 1.02 minus 1. So sorry, this will be 1 minus, right? Yeah.
Sir, it is coming negative.
Yes, it will come negative. Sorry about that. Yeah, it will come negative. So I think it will be negative 0.0286. 0.28566. Now, why we are getting a negative estimate for P? Can you tell me?
So because theoretically the binomial distribution has a variance which is less than the mean,
Correct.
and but in this the data given, it's actually the opposite. So that's why.
Correct. Yes. So you see, this is my theoretical mean and variance of the binomial distribution. So I can write the variance of X as variance of X as expected value of X times 1 minus P. Now P always lie between 0 and 1. So 1 minus P is a fraction, right? So you multiply a positive real number with a fraction. So that means variance of X is less than or equal to expected value of X. So this is a result, theoretical result. So theoretically, that means for the binomial distribution, variance of X is less than equal to expected value of X. Okay. Now, my mean is, on the other hand, mean and variance. You see, variance is greater than mean. So binomial itself is not a very good candidate for this particular data. So we cannot use binomial model itself. With any value of M and P, you cannot actually use binomial as a good candidate for this. So this is a very quick check that you can do. You can check the mean and variance, and okay, if the variance is greater than mean, then immediately binomial is out of the window. Okay, so the conclusion is binomial distribution is not a good candidate. All right. Now we considered actually two more thing. One is skewed normal, but skewed normal, remember, that is more suitable for continuous when the variable is continuous variable. Our case, it's a count variable. So skewed normal will not be a very good candidate. You can try this out also to fit the skewed normal. I don't want to go right now because it's the PDF of skew normal is very complicated. Okay, so I don't want to jump into a too complicated model at this moment. But can I leave negative binomial for you as a practice? In fact, you will see most likely negative binomial is actually a very good candidate for this, because one of the reason negative binomial, the variance of negative binomial is greater than the mean. Theoretical variance of for negative binomial is greater than mean of the negative binomial. So actually negative binomial will be a very good case. So my suggestion is you try this out by yourself. Okay. So there is a Somebody has written something. Okay. All right. All right. Now I am closing this problem, and what I will do, I will start with another data set and another problem. Okay. So I'm just thinking which data set. So let me just go to okay. So I'll take a question. I think library. Now it is I think data sets. All right. So packages. If you go to the packages, these are the all installed packages that I already have. So data set, if I just set, so here is the data set packages, and there is bunch of data set that are already available. So we don't have to worry about the, so this is a little bit old data set, air quality data set. Okay. Okay, one of you have asked if I can show how to plot power function of a testing problem when you can time. Yes, I will do that. Sure. Do. All right, I'll come all those things, but little later. So, okay. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this new script and library data sets, and I'm going to take this, you just say head and say air quality. It will have actually 4 variables. So it has about 153 observations and 6 variables, but actually effectively it has 4 variables. The ozone, solar, R, and solar radiation, wind speed, and temperature on different day of a month on the year 1973 in the New York area. So ozone was measured in parts per billion, and it in the Roosevelt Island in New York, near New York City. Solar radiation was measured in the Central Park, it's the heart of the New York City. And then average wind speed between 7 hours and 10 hours in the LaGuardia airport, and temperature during the same period in Fahrenheit in around the LaGuardia airport. So these are the 4 measures that are observed over month and day. So it's a time series data as well as so we will discuss the time series aspect little later, but now what I will do, I will first we have to figure out whether these 4 variable ozone, solar radiation, wind, and temperature, what kind of variables are they?
Continuous.
Continuous variables, because we are measuring, we are using some instrument to measure these variables. So these are the continuous variable. Now how we, if you say, let's take temperature. Okay, if I just look into the air quality dollar temperature, if I just run this, so these are the values that I am seen. These are the continuous. I think they have rounded it off to the integer, but this is what the thing is. Now, if I just make a table, you will see this uh, table will be too long. You see, this table is too long. Most of the, like 56, I have only one value. 57, I have only three value. 58. Actually, even if I have three values, original values were not exactly 57. They may be 57.1, 57.2, or 57.3, and they were clubbed into 57. Probably that is what has happened. But what I'm trying to say, that I have only one value for each of the observations. Okay. So similarly, if you just take, say, wind, even wind will be even worse. Okay, because it's available in decimal place actually. Wind. If you do a table of the wind, see 1.7 one value, 2.3 one value, 2.8. So each value is available only once. So the problem that we are going to face is how we study the distribution. Right? Any idea how we study the distribution?
Sir, can we plot histogram of
Okay, yes,
continuous variable?
that is what we will do, but how we draw histogram?
First, we have to construct the class intervals.
Class intervals and
Correct.
how many class we will take?
Correct. So first you have to choose what we will do. What is the range of these variables? Say wind, okay, or temperature. Okay, what is the range? 1.7 to 2.7. Okay, what is the max of the wind? Max of the wind is this 1.7, and min of this 1.7. So generally what we do, we split these range into, say, 10 classes, or 10 buckets. Sometime they're called 10 beans. So I can say maybe 1.5 to 3.5. Then or I can just do, what I can do is sequence of between 1.5 to, say, 20.21, or say 1 to 21. Length out equal to, say, 10. So these are the typical equal interval that we can create. So 1.1 to 3.2, it's saying, so 3.25, and then what I can do is 3.25 to, so I have to decide one inclusive, and this one 3.25 will be exclusive. So it will be right inclusive, right closed kind of thing. We have to define 5.44. Okay, and then 5.442, 7.67. Then what I will do, I will check how many wind values, how many values of wind actually falls within the range of 1 and 3.25. So I'll calculate that. And that number is typically called frequency. So we will calculate the classes and we will calculate the frequencies. Correct? Are all of you with me?
So,
Mm-hmm.
sir, rather than doing all these, can we just simply plot a density plot for all these?
How
Because,
you plot density?
like, uh, uh, there must be some function.
Suppose there is, I mean, my question is how you plot density?
Sir, it takes individual points and it joins them using a floating hand, something.
What?
Like the points are like it's similar to histogram.
Hmm.
Just that in histogram we have class frequencies and in that we are clustering it, but in density plot, like each individual data points have some representation and we join
What
them.
is density?
Sir, I think it's similar to histogram, like it's
No, I understand.
huh.
Histogram and density, that is what I'm going to actually explain. But what is the relation between histogram and density? That is what I'm trying to explain. But do you know what is density?
No, sir, no.
That is what I'm going to explain.
Okay, sir.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So most, if you just do this histogram, it will give you nice graph. Okay. If I'm giving you the code right away, if you go this, then you write probability equal to true, and then you just say lines density of this, and then if you just do say a line width of say 2, and color you can give some nice color, so it will create a nice graph. Okay, very nice graph it will create. This is what you are talking about, right? So this will create a, if you just say hist, that will draw the histogram. Okay, and then if you just say okay, density and this thing, it will draw the density plot also. But what is the relationship between what is histogram and what is the relationship between density and histogram? That is what I'm trying to make the sense out of it. Okay, that is my goal. So these things will be, we can create very easily. It's not an issue. But what I'm trying to say is, let us try to understand the concept behind these things. All right. So if you add them up, then what is the length of the my sample size in row of air quality will 153 observation. If you add them up, this should give you, okay, hold on. This will give you the sample size n equal to 153. That is how, this is sometimes called frequency distribution. Not sometimes, it is called frequency distribution. Frequency distribution. Okay, guys, you have to wait for a little bit. I will, because now I really have to draw certain things. So what I will do, you just wait for a minute. I will log in through my tab and I'll draw some graphs by hands to explain you the density thing idea. So wait with me for 5 minutes. So you see this x1, x1, x2, x3, this, this classes we are creating, and then this is the f1, the frequency, the number of cases that we have between the number of observations that we have between x1 and x2. Then x2 and x3 is the class between which we have, say, if too many observations. That if too many observation is here. Okay. So then we are creating a box like this. That's how typically we draw the histogram, right? Now the question is, what happens, why I have to always take equal weight? Generally, all statistical software take equal weight, but I don't have to take equal weight. There is no, I can take a little bit bigger weight. Suppose I know that in the tail part, there are less number of observations. So I want to take a little bit bigger. So x4 and x5 here, right? Where x5 is a little bit bigger thing. But the question then, the problem is this frequency? So suppose this is another frequency, but looks like this box and this box get the same frequency, but are they comparable? They are not comparable because width is going to play a big role here. Clearly, width is going to play a big role. Okay, so
What do you mean by comparable, like among themselves?
What I'm trying to say that suppose x1 to x2, there are 5 observations only. Okay, between x1 to x2, there are only 5 observations. And between x4 to x5, there are about 6 observations. So that means if I randomly draw samples, technically the chance that I will see an observation between x4 and x5 is much less. Intuitively, it says that because x4 to x5, this is a much large width, right? And we have seen only 6 observations here. Whereas in x1 to x2, we have seen within a small width, we have seen 5 observations. So in that sense, these two are not comparable. So how we create a histogram which will give me a proper height representation in some sense where it will be comparable. This, irrespective of the width, it will be comparable.
You divide the frequencies by the width of the class frequency.
Exactly. So what we can do, we can divide the frequencies by the width of the class. Okay, so let me define the width. Say Wi is equal to xi minus xi minus 1. Then, and divide that the thing by width of the class. Now I can.
Sir?
Uh-huh.
Sir, what is the point of taking unequal class widths?
To make the point. I want to make the point that in a large class, I'm getting only 6 observations. In a small class, I'm getting a 5 observations. So that means my probability, I will see a point from this class actually have a higher probability. If you take the same, say same width here and create another thing, another class here, subclass here, I will see a point in this class is actually much less. Probably I didn't had any observation here. So that's why I created a large class. Okay, so that is what I tried to do, that I just try to make a point that when, if I take unequal class, then these heights or the frequencies are not comparable. In order to make it comparable, what I can do, I can divide these frequencies by their class width. Then these things are much more comparable. Whatever the thing, okay?
Okay, sir.
All right. Now, what I can do, can I divide this entire guy by its total sample size?
So the range divided by
Not range, sample size. Means
n.
Fn, F1 plus F2 plus dot 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 Fk equal to n. Sample up. So in our air quality data, we have 155 observations. So it will be 155. So if I divide them by n, so it will be like basically F by n W. So let me so let me write it properly. F by n W. Okay. So now what I'm trying to say, if I by n is typically approximated as the proportion in the of a value in the class, in a particular class I. So I can write it as P I by W, right? Now, if I by n, if I by n is typically called relative frequency. Relative frequency. And sum over if I by n will be how much?
1.
1. So if I by n is a representative value of probability in the ith class. So I'm effectively on the y-axis, I am representing probability but divided by W by Wi, the class width. Okay, so that means, and then here it is Wi and the density is Pi by Wi. So what is the area?
PI.
Area is the Pi. Okay. And this guy, Pi by Wi, got the name called relative frequency density. Relative frequency density. Which is effectively an approximation of, if relative frequency is an approximation of probability, sorry. If the relative frequency is the approximation of probability, then relative frequency density is an approximation of probability density. And probability density is the length or the height. You multiply with the width, then what you get is the area which represents the probability or the relative frequency. Are you guys all with me? This is actually very crucial concept. So basically, histogram, when if you remember in the hist, after giving the variable, I put a comma, probability equal to true. So that means I'm asking R to, on the y-axis, you plot exactly this guy, relative frequency density or the probability density, to create the histogram that will represent each of the box relative frequency, and the total area under the box will be 1. All these area of boxes will be 1. So that is the probability density. Concept of probability density is coming from there. Now what happens is, imagine you're in, now I'm going to a thought experiment. Okay. What will happen if my sample size n goes to infinity? Because suppose I'm taking larger and larger and larger sample. I'm at a thought experiment level. And I'm asking this W to go to 0. So because now I have lots and lots of sample, I can make this class widths smaller and smaller and smaller. Correct? So then what happens is basically in this histogram will become a whole thing, and then this guy will eventually, if I by NW, I eventually will converge to some density of F at Xi, or more appropriate notation will be some smooth function of F at F evaluated at some X. So then what we will be able to do, and that is what we try to do by plotting a nice density curve, that can our histogram be approximated with a, say, Gaussian distribution or a gamma distribution. When we say that those things, that is exactly what we meant to say. Okay.
Sir, I have a doubt here.
Yeah.
Sir, here you mentioned that summation of fi by n is equals to 1, right?
Mhm.
So if we divide each term by with its own width with wi,
Mhm.
so in that, I mean, how can we say that then the sum will remain 1
See,
after
probability density will not necessarily 1, but if you integrate out, right? So when you are taking sum, remember that the sum is eventually converged to an integration, that is in limit. from your analysis, you should, is that make sense?
Yes,
So suppose I'm interested in probability. What is the probability? A is less than X less than B. Correct?
yes.
So what I will do, I will figure out where is the A. Here is my A. Where is B? Here is my B. How many cases are in between A and B?
The
Say F
X3, X4.
and
Yeah.
divided by N. That's what I will try to do. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, how you compute that FAP? Imagine you created the small classes. And then you created this, boxes. Okay, and take the sum of them. Now, as n tends to infinity, that sum in limit will converge to that integration.
Yeah, now I can see it. Yeah, what I was listening.
Okay.
Now it's clear.
So that is the concept behind the histogram. So histogram, if you want to draw properly, you should draw by making probability equal to true, not at frequency. It should be relative frequency density, so that the underlying density, underlying total area should be 1. So histogram is a crude estimate of probability density. And that is what the idea of probability density. Okay.
Yes.
Now remember that I draw that line, then line within I call density, and it draw some nice density curve. So that is some advanced method called kernel density estimation method. That is quite advanced method. We will come to maybe in the second, fourth semester. We can, if I get a chance to teach you, or I can at the advanced level, I can at that time I can give you some material where you can get those things and try to estimate the kernel density, learn about kernel density estimation method. But that is a built-in function. One line, it gives you at least a default setup, it gives you nice kernel density estimation. Okay. So now that is the idea of histogram. All right. So now I'll go back to my screen sharing mode. So anybody have any doubt so far? It's good. Hello.
So when we want to fit a given distribution, say as you said the Gaussian, whether we want to find out whether the Gaussian distribution fits into our data, so then the histogram should be, I mean,
so we'll do that right away. So let
Okay.
us try that. So suppose we assume that wind follow the wind variable, whatever we call it, follow normal distribution with some mean mu and variance sigma square. Okay. So that means I can say that mu hat and is equal to okay. Now question is how we estimate mu and sigma square. How we estimate mu and sigma square. One of you can tell me that if you do Google search that with this term, say likelihood estimate of Gaussian distribution. Okay, it will give you you will get tons of material including Kasselberger, where they have shown that MLE, the maximum likelihood estimate of mu for Gaussian distribution is mean, sample mean. MLE for mu is sample mean, and MLE for sigma square is basically slightly different than the, there are two estimates. One is unbiased estimator, another is a likelihood estimator. Likelihood estimator is this. 1 by n is square equal to 1 by n, and then sum goes up to x I minus x bar whole square. Okay, so this is the maximum likelihood estimate, and there is something called unbiased estimator of sigma square, that uses 1 by n minus 1. Okay, why n minus 1 and all this thing will have a huge mathematical derivation is there. I don't want to go there right now. So I will use these two basically. You can have a mathematically closed form solution, or I will show you how to do that numerically. I will not go there. I'll just use that mean of, so I'll just take wind as air quality of the wind. So I'll just make the life a little bit simpler. So it will make the wind. So this works well. Yeah. And then wind is equal to mean, and then n equal to length. X bar, wind minus x bar square, you then take, so basically I'm taking the x bar is 9.95. these are my winds value. Wind minus x bar square is giving me these values. Take the sum of it is this value, and then divide that by n. So this is 12.33. Okay. Now, if you just take variance of wind, it is 12.411. So slightly different. Now here, if you use -1, n minus 1, now it is exactly matching. So default formula is this one, which is not likelihood estimator, which is a unbiased estimator. Okay, so long run doesn't make much difference, but you must know which formula R is using, which formula you want to use. So you should be careful. So I want to use the likelihood estimates. So S square is this, and standard deviation is S equal to square root of S2. Okay. So this is my mean, likelihood estimate of mean mu, and this is the likelihood estimate of sample standard deviation. Okay. And this is the likelihood estimate of the variance. Now, what I'm going to do is draw a line or density over this guy. Okay. So how I will do that? So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to sort this thing because sorting is bit required. Otherwise, this always throw some weird graph. So it doesn't, going to change anything. Just you're still getting the same X bar, same standard deviations, same, everything is same, but it helps a little bit. And now once I have this, I'm going to say draw lines wind, comma, denorm wind with mean equal to m x bar, x dot bar, and standard deviation equal to s, this particular s, and color equal to some, I want to use some different color, maybe sky blue. Oh, I used small x dot bar. So you can see, oh, sky blue is too thin. Maybe I will just make it a little bit harder. W2, or maybe use a simple blue. Okay, so this is the density that we are seeing for, at least visually looks like it does not help us how much, but how we, now the next level of question is it a good estimate for, is normal going to be a good estimate? So for that, one thing some people do is something called QQ plot or quantile plot. So today I'm not going to describe the entire thing, but what it does, I'll tell you. I already have this distribution wind, correct? These values, this is my real data set, the wind. I have sorted it, but these are my data set. Then I'm saying that, okay, my wind follow normal mu sigma square. After estimating mu and sigma square, I can simulate some data from this distribution. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So I can simulate same number of observations, and I can check if these observations are, say, so I'm just motivating. QQ plot actually happens slightly different way, but I'm just trying to motivate you. Say wind, I'm going to call it, say, wind dot sim, just simulating. Okay, R norm. How many samples I would simulate? I would simulate maybe
153.
153 exactly. So here I have n is there. So I can just simulate 153, mean equal to x dot bar and y equal to s equal to s. Now after, so I have simulated the simulated values, and now I can say what I will do, bar AMF row equal to C 1, 2, and then I'm just trying. I want to do this and with one place, and then what I'm going to do is draw the histogram of this simulated winds here. This is my simulated values, and this is the actual original values. Okay, I can do it a couple of more times. So maybe that will give. So I don't know. All right.
So you're not
okay.
running the
Yeah,
simulation.
yeah. I'm not running the simulation, so that's why it's not changing. So maybe I will just do it here. Yeah, correct. All right, I have to do one more thing. Probability equal to true. Otherwise, it's not comparable. Yeah. So we can see that it's bit of a slightly, there could be similarity. I don't know. We can say it could be normal. We cannot really say that. But one thing we can do is we can plot them as, now these wind sim, now I have what I have done, I have sorted them as well. Now these sorted values, I can plot them side by side, the original wind and the simulated value. If they are coming from the same kind of distribution, then I can expect that this will be somewhat on the same straight line. Do you tell me why? I think why I expect so?
So, so apparently this is the x equal to y line, like the best.
Correct. But why, if they're coming from the same distribution, right? If I sort them, after sorting, if I plot them, if they're coming from the same line, I would expect that the value which is, so this is on the x-axis, I'm plotting the original values, original observation, actual observations. And on the y-axis, I'm plotting the simulated values. Okay. Now, if they're coming from the same distribution, the actual normal distribution, my simulated value, the fives and these fives, they will be somewhere in the near, or the number of values which will be less than 5 will be same for the simulated values, and the number of values which will be less than 5 will be same. So it's like quantile, that how many observations below 5. So maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are about 9 values which are less than 5 for wind, and 9 values which is less than 5. Or actually, if I include that, this value for this one, so for simulated value it is 10, but they are approximately close. Similarly, you can choose set 10. The number of values that are less than 10 in case of the original observation is about, I would expect they're same. for the simulated values also. Okay, so that means so what is these values? These are actually quantiles. When I'm sorting them and presenting them, they are not anymore just simple observation. They are also actually presenting the quantiles. So I'm comparing the quantiles of the original observations, quantile estimates, and quantile estimates from the simulated values. So that is why this plot is called QQ plot. If say now what I'm going to do, I'm going to purposefully distort this with some large mean and variance. So I'm going to add say 10. Okay, and in variance I'm going to add some say 2. So I'm purposefully distorting just to check how this graph behaves. So first thing, actually, let me just run this thing. So now my new X bar is 19 point. So previously it was 9 point something. Now I added 10. So it is now 19 point something. And my standard deviation is now 10 point something. And now, so this is my histogram. Now density, this new density is not at all a good one. It's completely in a different zone. Simulated we are taking value between -20 and 60. It's really large range. I purposefully I have done that. And then if I just do that, now you will see it is still sort of a straight line, but because they are, but you can see the range is completely now distorted. So this is the nutshell. This is the idea of the QQ plot. To check, this is a visual check of, but this is not exactly how the QQ plot are being drawn. I will discuss it maybe in the next lecture. But this is the concept. That is what we would like to do. So next week, I will continue on this QQ plot and how to do it using ggplot2 and all these things. But it gives us an idea that whether the fitted distribution is good model, or the distribution that we are assuming is a good candidate for modeling the data at in hand. Okay. So let us try the gamma distribution. So what we can do is shape. All right, so we can A is equal to shape and is equal to, I think, scale. Let me just a minute. Shape equal to A and scale equal to S. So shape PE equal to A and scale equal to S. So I have to provide the value of A and S. The mean is A times S and variance is for gamma is A square. So A times S is equal to mean of wind. So mean of wind is 9.975, and variance is A times S square is equal to variance of wind. So 12.41154 is the variance. Very good. We got it. Now I can write it as A is times S times S, which is 9.9575 times S equal to 12.415. So my S is 12.4115 divided by this guy, 9.9575 is 1.246451. So this is my S. So S equal to this guy. Okay. And then I have to compute the A. So that is simple because my A is this. My S is 1.24 this. So my A is equal to 9.95. So basically this 5 is equal to this 7.988681. So my A is equal to this. So I can simulate wind from gamma, this distribution also. So these are my simulated samples, and I can do the same thing here to have a check. First, sorry. So do you understand how am I trying to fit the gamma distribution in this case? So d gamma, I have to fit d gamma and shape equal to A and scale equal to S. So if this is my histogram, and if I fit gamma distribution, that's how it will fit the gamma distribution. Okay. And then if I just do this kind of thing and wind simulated wind is actually, let me just simulate from here. Sorry. And then this is my simulated values. And looks like, and this is the sort of a quantile plot that like I'm just simply simulating sorted values of winds and sorted values of simulated winds from the gamma distribution. So I'm simulating wind from the gamma distribution and just sorting them. So I get a sense of the quantiles. I'm just effectively I'm plotting the quantiles. But here you can see it is slightly different. So now the question is gamma and normal or Gaussian, gamma or Gaussian. I prefer the Gaussian to say instead of normal. Gamma and Gaussian both are good candidate, looks like, for modeling wind distribution. The question is which one to take. Okay, so today's task we conclude gamma and Gaussian both looks like good distribution, good candidate model to for modeling modeling wind, modeling the distribution, probability distribution of wind, probability distribution of wind. Question is which one we should take. Question is which is better. Okay. Any other question? That was good question indeed.
Sir, there's another doubt. Like, since some of like we are taking the statistics course this semester, and I've gone through some of the books also. So most of the books and most of the lectures talks about the data distribution with single model, with the single mode, with single peak. But there are some cases like if we take some height data of general population, so generally two peaks come up. The data has the two modes. So the things that we are studying, is it generalizable to multimodal data as well, or is there something?
No. See, gamma, the way I'm trying to teach you, so I'll give you a very good question. So I will, there is a data set called faithful data set, okay, faithful. It's called Old Faithful Gazer data set, okay. So it's in the, I'll talk about it next week about this data set. It's a fascinating history is there. And it has two variables, okay. Head is, if I just write, just, ask to print first few codes, it has only two variable. One is the eruptions, another is the weighting, okay. And if you plot, say, histogram of, say, eruptions, okay, eruptions, and probability equal to true, you will see that there is a two models coming. One is very close to 1, another is very close to 3. And then if you do the weighting, it's even clear actually. It's even clear, okay. So there could be a possibility that you can come up with a gamma, bimodal distribution. Now, if you try to fit a gamma distribution or normal distribution, you will be completely wrong. You will be completely wrong. So that's why I keep saying all models are wrong, some are useful. So when I'm modeling wind, Gaussian and gamma turns out to be, looks like an useful distribution. But if I try to fit gamma or Gaussian in modeling the weighting distribution of faithful data set or the eruption variable of the faithful data set, I will be completely wrong. It does not make any sense. So I will eventually go how to fit a bimodal distribution or trimodal. If you have multimodal distributions, how you do that, why multimodal distributions comes up, what it means, all these things will come to that. But yes, remember one thing, all models are wrong, some are useful. And when I'm saying useful, it's useful with respect to data. Okay. So next week, maybe we will handle with this kind of this faithful data, how we estimate the, how we come up with even a model. I mean, I can bet any model that you have learned so far, even if the people who are from stat honors, you guys can try any model that you have learned from the textbook, none will work. I can bet on that. So you have to do something different here. Okay. So any other question? All right. Looks like people are real hungry. People are dropping off. So I'm also hungry. So
Sir.
yeah.
Sir, I have a suggestion
Yes.
regarding offline classes actually.
Okay.